We're just rolling. Midnight Mormon's rolling live right now.
Out of other people,
He does these streams with his cousin or something.
Can be like brought down and just have no faith in their life because they just somebody makes them leave the church because
I was listening to this when I came over.
What a weird position to be in that I never thought I'd be in, where I'm like, if this kid comes to talk to me, I'll be like, yeah, man, don't leave the church. Yeah, man, have faith. Joseph Smith is a prophet, all that stuff.
Do it, guy, do it. Yeah. My nephew is like in his second week of his mission, and they're telling me that he's knocking doors, just basically knocking every day. And it kind of broke my brain. I didn't think they were doing that style anymore. I had no idea. Like, I imagined he was going to have some simple little easy time.
Atheism, Frederick Nietzsche,
famously
said God is dead and we have killed him.
So this is actually one of the things I had pulled up is he's talking right now that atheist says, you guys don't know atheism. I have one of the things that Jacob Hansen did a call out of like atheist moral philosophy again. It's like a shorter video, but I'm not running smack on it. But that's one of the bigger things that I was also thinking about looking at, because Dehlin dropped 2-3 videos and I watched all of them with a Gospel Tangents dude. Larson made his own video, and his own video, I'd call it like just on time for 2003 atheism debates. Larson, you're in just on time for it. And I wanted to kind of poke at that. And then in the middle of it, Jacob Hansen, I have to admit, he is dicing up all these Reddit atheists. He dices them up because they're kind of not ready for that. And he's mentioning that this guy's watched one of the things. That doesn't mean that I can't poke a couple holes in Jacob Hansen. I know I can poke some holes in the stuff that he's saying, but for most, the average, and it's part of my problem with this whole thing, is like the Dehlinite crowd of ex-Mormons, they kind of stink at it. But a couple of guys who listen to us, Troy Levitt and Blue Meanie, they gave him, they picked out their comments because they gave him some run for their money. And I'm sure talking to him live, they'd able to expound on it.
Dehlin picked out their comments?
No, Jacob Hansen did. Did you watch the last video with Jacob Hansen and these guys?
Since the one that we covered? I think he's probably been on there since then. Yeah, it's been.
Yeah.
No,
he came on since, and so I'll kind of catch up with the stuff. It's not like it's.
He does seem like he'd be more willing to engage with, like,
Jacob?
Yeah, like engage
For
with
sure.
actually difficult argument, like engage with the steel man, basically, is what I'm.
For sure, but he still takes them on. The problem is he's taking on a comment, and but a couple of the guys they picked out are guys that I know that they're kind of more along the lines of a little bit how we see stuff. He picked out Troy Levitt. Troy's the guy who got booted from that Harry Potter video game. He has a cool channel. I like his channel.
Yeah.
And Blue Meanie comments on our stuff all the time too. And they
see a lot of Blue Meanie.
Let me see here. Spiritual warfare is real. Helping the atheists cope. Usually I kind of come in hot with like, I got this hot take, but this is all just kind of stuff that it's just generally low key watching this stuff. If I was gonna have any hot takes this week, they're kind of more political than they are in the Mormon world, because Dehlin's and Larson's stuff was just kind of dull. And there was a thing on the 24th with Kara of her doing this. Maybe I'll talk about that. I don't know, but
yeah, I saw Kevin mentioned something about that, but I didn't watch it.
She did on the 24th of July. She did basically one of those.
The Pioneer Day.
Pioneer Day stuff, and then we got to cover how horrible the Mormons were to some.
Oh God!
And then she gave a story of a kind of like dubious mythology of what happened to these Waukesha people. And I had to, of course, look up what actually happened to Waukesha people, and of course she made it sound a little bit worse than it actually was. But
well, you can do that. In fact, you should do that.
Yeah. So like they just kind of take on the comments and look at this. The problem is like I have one little point from all these 3-hour streams. You know, RFM did a stream about Mormonism creates compliant people, right? Okay. And they did like a couple hours of that, but he went down the same path of stuff that I think Kevin and I did, it of just looking at, I mean, it's kind of an obvious path to go through, but it was looking at Jonathan's video of Bednar talking about agency, and then bringing up that new stake president talking about agency, and then just saying, oh, all they're doing is creating compliant people. And one of my complaints with them is that a lot of like the ex-Mormons, they don't like stop and say, are you still being compliant type people?
Yeah,
as soon as you leave the...
I didn't watch RFM's video, but that statement in itself, I would totally agree that Mormonism creates compliant people. I don't think it's a goal of the religion itself, but the people in charge of it definitely want. I'm not even saying just compliant to them, but it just compliant to, being nice, be agreeable. They want you to be agreeable. I think that's damn sure. You can come up with many justifications within the doctrine of Mormonism to not be an agreeable person and to not be compliant. They've done it in the past. It's just, for my entire life, I've viewed them as being very, like, you respect authority, even if it's like shitty. I remember one of my friends talking about how, he had this teacher in high school that was just an asshole. And I don't even remember what the teacher did, but he got in an argument with the teacher. Teacher said, have your dad come and talk to me. And the dad went and talked to him. And the dad's like, yeah, that guy's an asshole. And my friend's like, see? And then his dad goes, but you still got to listen to him. And he's like, what the hell, man? You want me to be compliant to this guy that you admit is abusing his power? So I don't know. I don't know what RFM said about it, but that statement on its face,
well, I think they just,
and I think that honestly, I think that Midnight Mormons would agree to it to that extent, because that's sort of their niche, is being the non-compliant, not with their doctrine, but like non-compliant with, we're not gonna, treat everybody with kid gloves like they expect us to.
Yeah, they're bucking as hard as they can, still within the limits of not getting in trouble inside of Mormonism. What they ultimately just focused on was Mormonism just makes everybody compliant within Mormonism. My only complaint ever with RFM is that they don't take the eye back all the way. They don't take the eye back to, do we as ex-Mormons still have a bunch of those tendencies trained into us? And they work perfectly well. Like, so it's one of the things that I always like, look at ex-Mormons and my brain just boggles with them. It's like, I know every one of you ex-Mormons look at Russell and Nelson and just go, ooh, and why do you do that? Well, because you think that you see underneath the smile, you think you see this old man who a bunch of other people see as nice and whatever, you think he's up to something sneaky about you. But then you come out of that and you look at Biden, and to me, like, Biden is the exact archetype, like, as I always talk about in the lobster group, they always say, like, archetypes. What's the archetype? Just kind of joking about archetypes. Yeah. How are those two things not the same archetype that you're looking at right there? You're looking at like a crinkly old man who's just part of the supersonic neoliberal system, and you're supposed to see underneath the smile. But no, RFM and as far as I can tell, they just, they don't.
They're absolutely compliant. They're just compliant to different things now. Ex-Mormons, for sure. They stay completely compliant to things. And my favorite example now, I think I was ranting to you about it, that group chat about the food compass. Was I talking to you about that?
Yeah.
The actual like nutritional ranking system from an actual college, from an actual doctor that like has a ranking. First off, like it's 0 to 100, the score, and then 97.
Like that makes sense.
Like the second thing on the list, the short list of foods, is canned peaches, and that's ranked at a 97. This is like it's peaches sitting in candy water. Like that's how it's preserved, just sugar, and that's at a 97. That's the healthiest you get. They have, and that's in the green, and that's things that are, go at it, eat as much of this as you want. Cheerios are there, and then you go down to the yellow, which is eat in moderation. Things like chocolate-covered almonds, frozen yogurt, and Lucky Charms are moderate. In the red, it's all meat products. Like even just like it says beef
Yeah, they're trying to
egg,
demonize meat and that stuff.
And skinless chicken breast. Like a baked skinless chicken breast has less nutritional value than Lucky Charms. Even pizza. Pizza is in the red, but it's still like I think eggs were rated at a 26 and pizza was a 25. So eggs just barely edge out pizza in the not recommended file. So I like to use that's my new favorite study. That ranking system that I'm going to use to point every time somebody tells me just trust the science, and you get that from ex-Mormons. They're totally compliant with the science, you know. And I guess my thing with RFM is I think he doesn't feel like that much is his responsibility, and I guess maybe it's not. Because he just wants to talk about Mormonism, the crazy shit in Mormonism. There's plenty of crazy shit to talk about, and the super harm that it causes. But sometimes you'll get a little bit of pushback where you can tell it's maybe an area where he ignores a little bit, like in that debate with Midnight Mormons. I think it was Cardin that kind of pushed back a little bit and said, you're stripping away this belief system and replacing it with nothing. And that kind of struck him like,
right.
what would I replace it with? Like, like, that's not, I'm not trying to replace it with anything. I'm just trying to tell you what's wrong with it. And I get that point of view, but
and it's the easy
that they're right. Like I think they're totally right that if Mormonism kind of just is your identity when you're a Mormon, and when you walk away from it, a lot of times, if you haven't built your own identity, you're just stripped of everything, and you're left in, I don't know, your mid 30s, mid 40s, whatever, trying to build a new identity from scratch, and you probably suck at it.
Yeah.
And so I think to offer some sort of an alternative, and none of them really, I mean, RFM doesn't do it. He's just an informational guy, but like John Dehlin kind of offers an alternative. He has his own religion, I guess. His whoa. Bullshit.
So on his well, he does the Thrive stuff, but on his Gospel Tangents interview today, he did admit a bunch of times that he thinks that the secular world has not figured it out at all.
Really?
So yeah, so he at least admits that. But RFM.
No. Hang on, I know what he did. I didn't watch this, but I know what he did. He's admitting it first off as like a playing it safe thing, but he's admitting it. Well, the secular world hasn't figured it out because, I mean, we're still super racist. We're still super sexist. I mean, slavery only ended like this many years ago. Women have only had the right to vote for this, but we're still a patriarchy. We haven't figured it out.
Yeah. Well, that's he did go on, although he was being interviewed on the Gospel Tangents show. So he was on good behavior, of course, too.
Yeah.
And trying to kind of admit to some things and not, although there's a lot to pick apart with that, but you'd have to watch the whole entire long thing.
Is Gospel Tangents like pro LDS or something?
Pro, yeah, he's a believer. Yeah.
Oh,
he's a believer who kind of does he's kind of like Steve Pinecker, you know, he just kind of interviews and he does let people talk. Like he let John Dehlin talk. John Dehlin all throughout the interview was, of course, throwing a fit like he has been, that I can't believe believing members don't want to come on my show, which I think is either disingenuous or you're crazy, like you're stupid, you know, because they obviously are harsh and rude and tough with Mormons, you know. Mm-hmm. And he was playing that game and he repeated it more than 20, 30 different times, and he's really upset at the church for scaring all Mormons from coming onto his podcast.
Yeah, it's the church's fault.
Yeah. But I'd say that the people who kind of filled that gap are Gospel Tangents and Steve Pinecker. They're the people who can get all the interviews of people on both sides because they just let them talk a little bit.
In fact, I'll even say that the church is probably what kept Rod Meldrum in that chair for that whole goddamn struggle session.
Yeah,
because anyone else would have been like, anyone else would have been like, okay, you've accused me of racism like 1,000 times, and you've chastised me. You've told me to denounce my closely held beloved beliefs. I'm leaving. Like 2 hours in, any normal person would have done that. But this super nice Mormon who doesn't want to rock the boat is going to stay there. So the Mormon church is keeping them in the seat, John.
Yeah. And all you're trying to get out of me here is a confession and, a struggle session, and for me to start lashing myself. That's all you're hoping for. You're not hoping to communicate any sort of thing that I believe at all. And what you're also saying about like that science stuff and diet, I mean, people in the bodybuilding and the fitness world have known forever that doctors don't know their asses from their faces when it comes to diet stuff. I mean, we've all always known that. I mean, they were ahead of the game 40 years on the stupid food pyramid and all that sorts of stuff. And they're only tripling down on that stuff. And you know it's all political because the only reason they're tripling down on it is because they're trying to demonize certain foods for climate change. They're not talking about health. They're not talking about health at all. They're talking about politically what foods you should eat. And they lie. That's one of the other areas of many, many areas because, you know, I got into a few more of the trans things today and all that. And the Lotus Eaters did a good episode on some of the fake studies that have been put out and how p-hacked that stuff's getting and how full of crap that stuff is. But the diet world is one of the first worlds, and I didn't even need to start like extrapolating out into something else where I started seeing the supposed experts don't know anything in this. They don't know. In fact, they say many things that you should do the opposite of. Many, many things. And
well, what was it for like people with diabetes for until just like a couple years ago? Wasn't their recommended diet like 80% of their calories are supposed to come from carbs?
Yeah, and they're just absolutely wrong about that stuff. And you can even stop and look at it and say they're not wrong. Sometimes they're just stupid because I've come across just random doctors.
But sometimes they're like the opposite of right, like the exact opposite.
They have an intentional purpose to steer you away from what's right. Sometimes they're just stupid, but sometimes they are. You can guarantee you're going to get the wrong answer from them, you know. And that's one of the first areas where you should be able to start seeing that stuff, that the things get effed up by politics and money when it comes to people cocking their head backs and screaming that they're scientists. But these guys, I like that they brought up in that very episode, they brought up the same thing that we brought up of the IQ. And so a little bit later here, he's bringing up all this other stuff. So he brought on some comments by Troy. Troy's cool. I know Troy could argue with him more too, but it was just the comment here. And I actually think that Troy and Cardinals guys would have a lot more in common than they believe too. But he calls up Jacob, saying that he's only done the most shallow investigation into non-religious moral philosophy to make the misrepresentation of it that he does, so much so that it does seems dishonest to me. Actually, he may need to repent of very fault. He seems like a lazy learner regarding it. I think that's some of the terms that like they use in the other ones, but then they start.
That was it Holland?
Yeah. But I think they mentioned it kind of recently.
Atheist you are. When the reality is, it takes more complexity of thought and intelligence to understand and be able to recognize God, the spirit.
Okay, so I mean, they kind of answer that, but I mean, he's got a quicker, shorter video. Those ones he just kind of answers directly. But where like they bring up the meme again. But where's Blue Meanie? Blue Meanie said something. They liked what Blue Meanie said. Oh, was that it? That was it.
That was, yeah.
The normative nature of moral statements arises from the fact that we are sentient beings who actively deliberate on how our actions impact the well-being of others, sentient and non-sentient creatures, and can empathize with how those other creatures are impacted from our actions, which can inform us on whether or not it cultivates or tears down the other beings' well-being. Well, so he noticed that's some Sam Harris talking stuff a little bit, like the well-being.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of just the non-aggression principle, basically.
Yeah. And then the Sam Harris stuff gets weird. I'm somebody who thinks Sam Harris took a great big swing and whiffed it at crossing the is-ought gap.
Sure.
And that's because nobody's going to cross it.
Well, I'm glad he's swinging at it. I'm glad he's... I don't like Sam Harris that much for a lot of reasons, but I do like that he's trying to make some sort of an objective case for morality. Yeah, he's trying to. Paul Vanderklee's pointed out a couple of times that he just doesn't listen to the people telling him kind of the same thing over and over again about but you're still, no matter what, at some point you're making an assertion and you're switching from the science to an assertion. But what if I add more science to it and add more variables and add more people and put more stuff and get more of a great big techie super view of the whole thing so we can really, really know for sure from a great big AI level? And they say, well, as soon as you say ought, you've made the jump, and it doesn't matter how much data you put behind it. It doesn't matter at all. This was a shorter video of them.
Sometimes they'll try to dig a way around and say, you know what, society determines morality. It's a societal convention.
Popularity contest.
Yeah.
In America,
But there's some truth to that.
when we decided as a society it was okay to enslave black people,
or when Hitler
was it
decided
right or wrong then? Fair to say that, because I would flip it the other way. I feel like 9 out of 10 times they do turn to the societal argument, or we get to decide, or the group gets to decide. And then the one time, because I don't think I've ever heard anyone say rape is okay. I never have anyway.
This guy hasn't listened to Vosh.
Let's go back to Bonson on this.
Yeah.
So
Arbitrary. There's your favorite word.
Fuck.
society gets to decide. Is that arbitrary? The whim of society is just arbitrary, right?
Well, the
So why do I have
standard
to
is
care what the arbitrary society says?
well, it's two-sided of arbitrary. It's arbitrary that they get to decide, and it's arbitrary what they choose, right? So
Yeah.
it's
all arbitrary. Here's the thing. Actually, hey, do you want to know what the best actual?
So basically, he's doing the whole thing, and he's correct in doing it. I think Troy's correct too, just in the sense of that he thinks that some atheists, because I agree, most Reddit atheists, most John Larson atheists haven't done very much to break down into this moral philosophy to see this and understand it. But it's the postmodern thing. Like, they break down to that if there is no overarching meta-narrative, no objective morality, then it's just who asserts more forcefully. And some people make the argument that it's by popularity. Some people make the argument that it's by elitists make that assertion. And then it's just, and who's to say? We're back to the postmodern who's to say. But then
One of the
guys
2005 atheists, they didn't like having these arguments. Like, because I don't know, I remember like Dawkins. So William Lane Craig is a good one that uses that. He mostly just uses C.S. Lewis arguments. Like he's super Christian, but he talks about the whole is-ought gap, and he talks about whether or not morality is objective, and if there is no God, maybe it can't be objective, is what he says. But Richard Dawkins refused to debate him because he said he was homophobic.
Really?
Yeah. But and this was way
gosh.
back in the day. So rather than Richard Dawkins, I'm pretty sure Lawrence Krauss debated him. And it's not like I think Dawkins would have done a great job, because it's not even, he's not a philosopher. He's a great microbiologist, but he's not a philosopher, because I know what he would do if you bring up the whole objective morality thing. Well, is it really, is the Bible somewhere we really want to get our morals from? Because there's this one verse in Corinthians where it says it's okay to stomp a baby's brains out so long as the brains don't get on your yarmulke. Some shit like that. And like, okay, but that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah. So I think it's true. And I think even Sam Harris mostly dodged it. And then he tried to get into the moral landscape. I don't know, even then it's been critical of him trying to get into the moral philosophy stuff. But
what did he call his free will book?
Oh gosh, he said
it was mean.
He said other people have already done this better. Why are you doing it? Something like that.
He said some phrase that was like akin to chloroform in print. That Mark.
Yeah, and Sam got really mad about it. Yeah.
They both got mad. It was actually a really stupid argument. I listened to it like last year again, and it was like he called it that because Harris had once accused him of being kind of religious in a way, and I don't know. They both just got real butthurt. And it was really funny coming from Sam Harris, who is just very logic, soft spoken. Don't get butthurt when somebody, I don't know.
Anyway.
Oh, all right. What kick-ass Larson take are you gonna show me?
What do you think it is? Seven honest questions for atheists. His reply. This is his first video. And he's answering 7 honest questions from a Christian.
I don't know, but I know we're gonna hear the phrase. It's called empathy. Try it.
Well, I think it's 2003 atheism. He tells us like, well, I just don't think there's a good reason to believe because I haven't had it happen in my life, and this sorts of stuff.
Perspective. That's given in the name. Atheism means you're against or you're the opposite of theism. And I think one of the general big problems we run
without theism isn't A just without.
Bing, 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 bing. somebody described what atheism means for us.
Yeah, he's talking about anti-theism, which is cringe as fuck. It's like they bastardize the whole. They take the you're not. What is it? If you're not with us, you're against it. They take it a step further and say, if you're not against them and them and them, then you're against us.
Yeah. I think every one of these questions, like if anybody's spent any time with Matt Dillahunty or Sam Harris or anybody, like at some point, like why are you watching John Larson give the same canned answers to the same atheism questions? And because he was on Mormon Stories and his very first thing puts out, and he's got 4,000 views on it. And
yeah, I guess it's Matt Dillahunty, like he might have had some good point. I didn't listen to a whole lot of him because I had already listened to Hitchens and Dawkins and all of those people, and kind of ran out of interest in that really quickly.
Because it's the same answers.
Yeah, that's all it is. And all I've ever seen Dillahunty do, and I haven't watched a whole lot of him, so I might be wrong about this. All I've ever really seen him do is he just knows the Bible really well. So he just like they can be like, well, how could it's always some idiot that's like, well, how come you atheists don't go raping people and shit? And he's always like pulls out a Bible verse that's like, it's okay to rape the wives of your fallen enemies or something like that. And
yeah, so
like, okay,
he and Aaron Ra do a lot of that. And the other thing that he does is that, you know, if he's going to explain Occam's razor, he's rehearsed reciting Occam's razor 500 different times and done it 500 different times on his live streams. And so he gets that rehearsal of just getting it more and more perfectly refined and just saying that argument again. And that's why I point to him and saying, like, we're in a post-Dillahunty world, because Dillahunty wasn't the first to make those arguments. He was just the guy to almost nightly sit on live streams and rehearse answering them again and again and again and again and again, and more refined, more refined, more refined, more refined. I don't even think they're like more nuanced. It's just getting down to where you're saying it in a quicker, faster, more perfect way. You know, kind of how we always try to get the definition of critical race theory kind of more concise. You know, he's done that, and it's been done for 20 years, and it's so old. We don't need another person to sit and do it and say, hey, I'm going to have these honest questions. And it's one of my frustrations with the ex-Mormon Overton window, because it's like they're just way behind. They're way behind on like all the atheism discussions, and I kind of don't know why that is, but they should be.
I've been thinking about this whole accusation of, because we talked about this a lot in one of our last videos about it's old, you know, and I'm like, okay, but not like, what is it that I don't like about it? Because it's not that it's old, I don't think, because not all old things are bad, nor do they get dull. I think that's what it is that it was never all that insightful. You know, a lot of these things, it was just kind of like, it was something that you notice and you're like, oh yeah, that is a little bit, there's something to that. But then it fades really quickly, because there's a lot of things that I've learned for, like, I don't know, something cliche is like, if you set out for revenge, then dig 2 graves. You know, that's cliche. That's old. We've heard it a million times. But the more you see it in storytelling, the more profound it becomes to you. And the oldness doesn't make it suck. So what is it about this stuff that makes it suck eventually?
Yeah, there's a good question. That every once in a while, I think some things, like, I think their canned answer to the Occam's razor thing's not that bad of a canned answer, but that one more frustrates me. That
maybe it is that they're canned answers.
They're canned answers, but the problem is like there's been John Larson's coming onto the scene to be the next guy to give us those canned answers again, and we're, like I said, it's post-Dillahunty world, which post-Dillahunty plus TikTok world plus YouTube world, like there has been 850 million next guys who are there to re-explain us the Occam's razor exactly how Matt Dillahunty explained it. And there's a million one of those videos doing it again and again and again and again and again. And even Matt Dillahunty was already the rehash. Does that make sense? And
well, plus you can get people they don't like explaining Occam's razor. Like I've heard Ben Shapiro explain Occam's razor and Hanlon's razor and stuff like that all the time. And so now it's like problematic.
Now all those guys are baddies. I wonder if he didn't list the questions here. I'd have to read through it, but it's
I could probably
really
tell you
dull.
his answers if I knew the questions.
Yes. If I gave you the 7 questions, you would tell me exactly his answers. Maybe I can find him in the transcript without you seeing what he says.
Hang on.
I want to show you the only part that I thought was worth going. Troy came at Jacob Hansen, but the truth of it is Jacob Hansen's ahead of John Larson and Dehlin. You know, he's ahead of them down the road.
He's like these arguments, that the 2004 atheist arguments, are no problem for somebody like Jacob Hansen.
And I'm sure, yeah, I'm positive like Troy Levitt's down the road on that, you know, but the problem is the guys who are running the ex-Mormon scene are 20 years behind. It's kind of like my joke of Mormons 20 behind years and something. They always kind of say, you're 20 years behind on civil rights. You're 20 years. Well, you're also 20 years behind on atheism debates. You really are. And,
yeah.
And John Dehlin is, anytime he starts talking about that old atheism crowd. Okay, one thing about the Gospel Tangents interview is I realized that, like, holy crap, Dehlin, you've read way more than I have inside of the apologetics blogosphere by far. And part of me was like, why did you were there? You could have been there around the bigger national talking scene of the 2000s, but you just were still locked in to Mormonism. And you were so locked into that you've read and looked at so much more of it than I have. But holy crap, it's like he never peeked his head outside of it. And in a weird way, when you watch that whole video, I think it shows once again that he's doing more Mormonism. Him and Mormons and Mormonisms and Mormons are all going the same direction. And I don't know how else to describe it. It's just like a river I see, and they're just both floating down the same river. Jacob Hansen's ahead of our supposed leaders of, like, John Larson's the fiery talking guy who the ex-Mormons look at to be their, hurrah, we have John Larson here and Jacob Hansen would dice him up. And not because John Larson's not capable of it. It's just like his head's been up his butt. I don't know what to say else to say about that. But.
Yeah. So I found these 7 honest questions for atheists by this time.
You found the question? Okay, so you can ask it. I'll tell you. I watched this and I think I remember it, so I'll tell you how close you get.
Well, I did, but here's the thing. They're not what I thought they would be. I thought they'd be like, gotcha things. Like, real
No, they're not gotcha. They were honest questions. And then he tried to
just like, would you say that you are or were an atheist based primarily on intellectual study or based on experience? Or did you never believe in God at all? He's going to get mad at that. He's going to get really mad that he asked if he never believed in God at all, because ex-Mormons hate when you suggest that maybe you never believed or you never have a testimony. To what?
John Dehlin, if you nailed John Dehlin really hard in that Gospel Tangents thing, because of course so much of it is, I stopped believing in the 90s. How dare you question that I wasn't honest and still believing in 2014?
I know he tries to act like this. His excommunication was this terrible thing to him. I was like, I didn't feel bad for you.
And it's so back and forth. It's so, yes, I for sure stopped believing. Yes, I for sure thought it was bad. Yes, I for sure started thinking, no, I for sure thought they should have stayed in. And I was your ally. I was your helper. And no, I stopped believing way back then. And it's so schizophrenic.
Like you spent 2 decades actively trying to pull people out of this club. And like, sometimes you'll admit to that if it works for your specific podcast that you're doing. And then the club kicked you out. And you're like, why did you kick me out? I love this club. You're causing me such harm.
Yeah.
Shut up, man.
So I'm going to say you nailed Dehlin's Gospel Tangent interview. This one, you got the content right, but the delivery is more snide than angry.
So I'm just used to him having like a mental breakdown at every turn.
That's where I have it lined up. But we'll see if you can pick where that one is if you get through the question.
Let's see. Number 2, would you say that even as an atheist, you still have a sense of purpose and destiny in your life, or feeling that you were put here for a reason and you have a mission to accomplish? And he's going to say that here's the thing. I don't feel like I've been put here for a reason. I feel like I create my own purpose as an individual, which somehow lines up with free will not existing. And my purpose is to make people feel guilty about climate change. Number 3.
Yes, you got it perfect. Yeah.
Number 3.
I would say anybody listen to this, you don't need to listen to question number 2 answered by John Larson. He got it. Okay.
Would you say that you are 100% sure that there's no such being as God? By God, I mean an eternal, all-powerful, all-knowing being. Or would you say that for all practical purposes, you have concluded that this God does not exist, although it is impossible to prove such a negative without absolute certainty? He's going to say that that's manipulative. That last sentence, throwing that in there, it's not possible to prove it with certainty, because he's gonna go into the atheistic. You can't prove a negative thing. He's probably gonna do that. Let's see. He's gonna do that thing where he pretends that he's nuanced and says that I
hate the word nuance so much.
I know they've ruined it, especially Kara.
Dehlin did a number on the Gospel Tangents interview too.
Did you see Kevin was explaining to us in that group chat his sort of his take on people who leave the church and stuff, and it was like very heartfelt and nuanced, and I was like, shit, man, you're like the anti-Kara. And I think I made him cry because he was like, that's the nicest thing anybody's ever said. No, he's going to act nuanced here, and he's going to say that obviously you can't be 100% certain of anything. That's what I learned by deconstructing Mormonism. You guys are the ones that believe that you can be 100% certain about things.
Yeah, I should have the maybe I'll put it over this when you're talking, and because Kevin and I pointed out that he looks like Sweetums from the Muppets, and so like when you're giving those answers, I'll have Sweetums talking them when you're saying it.
All right. So number 4.
Yeah, I don't think we need to.
We don't have to go through
check, but that's no. But I'm saying is like you're getting them. Like I think people could double check the work, but it's there. But I want to see if you pick up on the one that.
All right.
That he gets angry about.
So number 4, do you believe that science can provide answers for many of the remaining mysteries of the universe, including how the universe began, including where matter came from, and where the Big Bang derived its energy, the origin of life, and DNA coding? He's gonna throw that back in religion's face, and he's gonna be like, well, science can explain everything eventually, but you guys can't explain anything. That's, I mean, something along those lines. Number 5, have you had any experiences in life that caused you to question your atheism? Has something happened to you that seemed genuinely supernatural or otherworldly? Or have you been confronted with some information that shook your atheistic foundations, such as a scientific argument for intelligent design? If so, how have you dealt with such doubts to your atheism? Ooh, I'm not positive what he'll say to that. I know what Kara Burrell would say. And she'd say, no, the closest I've ever come is when I was doing shrooms last weekend for the 3rd time this month. And like normally I would have believed that it was God, but I don't really know if it was God this time because I'm a critical thinker and I don't have the something about free will and how I don't have it.
So,
I don't have a choice but to not believe in God.
The other Muppet Kevin and I use for her is that rock star Muppet, the girl rock star Muppet. Oh, for sure. I'll put that up when you were doing that.
I was thinking Beaker, but that's better.
Oh, that's a pretty good one too.
Oh man. So he's gonna, in that, I bet he'll go into something about how no, I've never had anything that shook my atheism. And if I did, which is possible at some point, I would doubt my senses before I believed that God or something. Or he might do the act nuance thing and be like, oh, maybe I believe in God if he ever showed himself. And he'll do the arrogant John Larson thing where, show yourself to me, God, right now in this room. Strike me down with lightning.
No. So up until even the part where he gets mad, I'm going to give you away the hint that I think he's actually trying to get this guy to interact with him and talk back.
Oh, okay.
So he's not trying to be too salty even when he gets mad.
Okay.
So you were right right up to the full thing, which we all know that he's capable of doing that thing. It's just I think he actually wants to get interaction with this guy.
Since he's been back on the scene, I've only ever seen him having mental breakdowns. So that's why. Let's see. Number 6. Are you completely materialistic in your mindset, meaning human beings are entirely physical, human consciousness is an illusion, and there is no spiritual realm of any kind? Or are you superstitious, reading horoscopes, or engaging in new... No, he's going to say no to that. That's pretty simple. If you were convinced that God truly existed, meaning the God of the Bible, who is perfect in every way... Oh, God. I'll finish this, but I know what he's going to say. In every way, full of justice and mercy, our Creator and our Redeemer, would that be good news or bad news? And would you be willing to follow him and honor him if he were truly God? Okay.
Those questions, man.
I mean, okay, again, mental, like you're saying he wants to get this guy to interact with him, so maybe he'll be calmer on this one. But the John Larson that I know and love would say, like, he would stop addressing this pastor and start addressing God and just start yelling, "Fuck you," and crying about how, well, if this God exists, then how come children are dying, and how come, like, I'd be better God than you, and you'll have to answer to me, God, and no, I wouldn't follow him. I'd go to hell, and I'd follow Satan because his plan was better because it saved everyone.
You definitely hit it right. He does get into, I don't know if it's exactly on that question, but he does get into the Stephen Wright thing of I would love to shake my fist at that God. Yeah.
All right.
How many more are there?
No, that was it. That was 7.
That was it. So I didn't even hear the part where, because which one?
I skipped parts of questions.
So the word that throws him off, that gets him miffed, tell me if you see it in there, is materialist.
Oh no, we did that.
Okay, so where does it come into question? I remember it said material world, but I think there's something about says, are you a materialist?
Yeah, number 6. Are you completely materialistic in your mindset?
Are you completely materialistic in your mindset?
Yeah, meaning human beings are entirely physical, human consciousness is an illusion, and there's no spiritual realm of any kind.
So how do you interpret that question?
Is there a soul?
Like the question's an honest philosophical question about materialism, right? Like what we know philosophically about materialism. John interpreted that as like material girl, material.
Oh my God, no way.
So
I was gonna make that joke, but I thought it was too dumb to make. I was like, and it was like I went in a slow motion as you started approaching that answer, and I was like, I should interrupt him and guess material. I was gonna say material girl. I was like, there's no fucking way, and that joke won't land. It'll be really stupid because that's way too satirical to be reality.
Yeah. So let's listen to that, because like I watched this whole thing.
2005 Atheist.
And the whole thing, I was like gonna fall asleep on it because most of them were like just the exact answer you're doing without like the voices and the Muppet faces. Although it is a Muppet face, but when he got to this point, I was like, what? Like you really don't know that? Like if you're talking to Jacob Hansen and Jacob Hansen brings up materialism, he's talking to you about the philosophical materialism, and he's not dropping a snide thing that you're a material girl.
I don't own any Gucci bags, Jacob Hansen. I donate all of my money to climate research. I don't have any money for material objects.
Yeah.
Are you talking about people who really believe in Greek astrology or whatever? I don't even know what you mean. I don't believe in horoscopes. I think they're demonstrably false. And I don't believe I have any superstitions. So no, I don't have any of that stuff. When you say you're completely materialistic in your mindset, I think you're being intellectually dishonest here by using the word materialistic, because what you're doing is you're framing materialistic into a more technical definition of meaning materialism versus spiritualism or mind versus the brain sort of distinction. But materialistic is used more commonly to associate with somebody who is just greedy, given to sensual pleasure.
You use the word materialistic just the same.
He didn't even misunderstand it. He's walking us through his own straw man right now.
Yeah.
Like he's saying he might as well have just said, I'm going to strawman what you said right now.
I'm going to twist this up into something really dumb.
Yeah, you said a thing that also means another thing, and maybe you meant the better definition, but I'm going to refute the definition that has nothing to do with the fucking subject.
But this is why I say it's because he's out of the realm, because he doesn't know that, like, if these Christian pastors are doing what Jacob Hansen is doing and what Card and all those guys are doing, they've been using the word materialism that way for a while now. They know that word philosophically. They might have used something else 10, 20 years ago because they were kind of more speaking Christianese back then. But they've all gotten to the realm of they know perfectly well the philosophical concepts, that stuff. And when they talk like that, like when you first read that question, it didn't cross your mind that they weren't asking the philosophical question.
No, because it's all about context. Now, obviously, if we're talking about philosophy, it's not a new thing to use materialism in the way that he's using materialism. Not at all. Like I'm in the middle of Anna Karenina right now. That book was written in the 1800s, and they're talking about materialism all the time.
Yeah.
In that sense, not in the
And
material girl sense.
Yes, if you've been around these scenes well enough, around these people having these debates, yes, they will say it. They'll say materialistic. Yes, they will.
Services, sex, food, whatever. And I think you did that on purpose. So I wish you wouldn't have. But I do not believe in a mind-body dualism. That my thoughts are the secretion of my brain, which is a physical entity. That I am a product of all of what is me physically, and those two are inseparable.
Oh, geez, Morty, that's really fucking deep, Morty. Where'd you get that from?
My body.
He's got a post from 2014 Facebook. I fucking love science. Hold up, I'm just reading it right now. I can see it.
Yeah.
Nervous.
I saw this cartoon by that Stone Toss guy who like said, "Oh boy, they've released new pictures of the universe," and he sees the picture and he's like, "Cool," and then he sees it right on the web page. I fucking love science, and he's like, "Oh fuck!" He's just like,
I want to pay. I'm gonna do a super chat at one point, disguised as somebody else, and I'm gonna pay whatever I need to get John Larson to put on a pair of like thick brim glasses and go.
Yeah.
I can get a stomach ache. If I get really stressed out, I can get a headache. So there's no
talking about being mad about
necessarily between my psychology or what's happening in my brain and the physicality of my body. So I do believe that human beings are entirely physical. And I think we've proven that over and over again with traumatic brain injury, with aphasia, with other elements where we can change the brain chemistry and change people's personality. I remember reading about a drug recently. I wish I could remember the name. And it took reasonable, highly intelligent discipline.
Maybe that's it. I think he does go back. I swear he does go back and say, "No, I can't believe you use that phrase dishonestly on me like that."
Well, he went back to it for a second and just, I wish you wouldn't have done that. He didn't do that.
He obviously didn't do that, and it would be ridiculous.
Do you believe in spirits, or do you like buying expensive shit?
But that's part of like what I go into is like saying like he thinks that pastor doesn't know the stuff. He doesn't know the arguments or doesn't know the materialism versus the spiritual and duality. Like he's explaining to him something. I honestly think that
he's a product of 2005 atheism, because the real problem with them is they led us to believe that Christians were stupid and incapable of critical thought. Because that's I loved watching those when I first left the church. I loved watching those Dawkins debates he'd have with people. The problem was they were always with the dumbest people.
Yeah.
It was always like single moms against evolution or whatever. He's got that debate against Wendy Wright, which is just insufferable. She'll be like, "Well, show me the evidence for evolution." He's like, "Well, we have Australopithecus in the museum just down the street, and we can go down there right now. And I just don't see the evidence." And so there's no arguing with her. She's just saying, hey, he'd be like, well, here's the evidence, and she'd say, no, basically. And so that's the picture they painted of Christianity, because they weren't willing to engage with. Except for there was one exception, was it's probably my favorite Dawkins debate ever. It was him versus Rowan Williams, who was the Archduke of Canterbury at the time. And that dude is smart as hell,
Mhm.
and they like. It's not like he dunked on Dawkins or anything because he's a really like nice guy, but he shocked Dawkins.
Mhm.
And that kind of got me into that world of listening to these. Like, this guy's saying interesting things and Dawkins isn't.
Yeah. Dawkins also, one of the areas, he's talked with Peterson. He gets a little bit, you can tell he gets a little bit flustered and confused. As we pointed out before, he has a tough time with abstracting. He doesn't like metaphor and all that sorts of stuff. He's just not interested in it. But Brett Weinstein brought it up again recently. I mean, with Peter Boghossian. Maybe I'll pull up that. Him and Peter Boghossian had a talk for an hour, and they brought up Dawkins again. And Brett tried to explain to Dawkins that religion is adaptive, not a virus. It's adaptive. If all we have in this world is evolution, and that's all it is, as Dawkins says, you have to look at religion as something that helped adapt society and helped, it obviously helped create successful societies and successful people.
Well, that was Eric Weinstein pointed out some cool shit about that. I remember like years ago him talking about that thing they'll point out to where it's like, well, in the Bible it says that you can take your disobedient children before a tribunal and they should be tried and they'll decide whether or not they're worthy of being stoned to death. And I don't think that's a moral system. And then Eric Weinstein pointed out that, okay, an atheist, Eric Weinstein, pointed out that, okay, yeah, like that sounds terrible for us. But like at the time, the alternative was the parent just decides when they can stone their kid to death. And if you take him before a judge that can be like, well, no, don't stone him to death. And that's an improvement over a previous system.
Yeah.
I hope that Dan McClellan gets a hold of this so he can be like, actually.
Yeah. I'll go to that conversation they had, because it also has them right before it. Oh, that'll be a good thing to go to. Anyway, I just wanted to look at this again because this is going back to them talking about the atheists not making sense of morality. But Jacob in that other stream, if you listen to it, where he's kind of talking back to Troy and and atheism is stupid, he says you have to have a God at the end of it to make your assertion, but I think he kind of gets himself caught up in the same argument about objective morality, because I don't even like say this is a bad belief or anything like that. But one of the things that they land on and point out is that God, the Mormon God, is subject to objective morality. The Mormon God, according to Jacob Hansen, I don't know if all Mormons always believe that. I think they kind of are.
Well,
but that God,
there's that article of faith that there is, or the Doctrine and Covenants thing, there's a law irrevocably decreed in heaven. So it makes it sound like God is subject to law. He isn't just the law. And talking this stuff out, and if you listen to this and those other two podcasts with the Midnight Mormons, he straight out says it. He straight up says that God is subject to the objective law too. So obviously, that still kind of gets to an infinite regress that somebody had to create that law before him, and so we're all still God. So I usually, like I pointed out, to like Christian atheism or something like that, where you say, well, I have a tough time believing some of the metaphysics stuff, but I believe the moral systems or the moral starting points of Christianity are good to keep rolling with. Although I saw somebody else make a critique of that today. Atheists are all just feasting on the dying carcass of Christianity to get through with our morality or something like that. But I actually kind of think there's some truth to that. I mean, that's getting back to the Nietzschean thing. And I just like John Dehlin was saying on the Gospel Tangent stuff, that he realizes that you can't herd atheists and you can't herd philosophers into all agreeing on the same focal point, as Vervaeke will say it. And Christianity does way better at that, or any religion does way better at that. But Christianity is maybe one of the best ones to land on and choose, because not only is it our tradition, but it's also a really good one. It's one that let in liberalism. It's one that brought about enlightenment. It's one that brought about these good things. So it's maybe worth holding on to. But the Christian atheism thing, or any sort of landing on the concept that, there's probably some objective morality that we can land on, that
even if you look at what Harris is arguing about, even all of his attempts are all trying to land on this objective morality through science. And the only problem is that even Jacob's God lands inside of that. And so that God has to choose that and find that himself and land inside of it and figure out how to operate within it.
I mean, I think if you really pressed him and he had to admit everything he believes, I bet he would just kind of believe in an infinite regression of gods, you know, like because that's sort of an inevitable conclusion of deep Mormon theology.
Yeah. And so it goes back and back and back forever. And so then that still kind of leaves you saying, well, then the law is as infinite as the God is. So is the law a God, or is the God outside the law, or something like that? But the ultimate point of it too is that ultimately makes it seem like even gods or even men, we're all still just trying to scramble around and find what the ground floor of those axioms are. We're trying, that's what we're doing, you know. Is it arbitrary? Is it mere? Is it actually there? Is there actually just hardcore objective truth? We're all poking around trying to hit ground floor of axioms. We're all doing that. And supposedly maybe gods are just ones that figured out what that actually is or something. But
you starting a religion?
Yeah, right.
This is deep doctrine with Chris Hanna. All right.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm just saying that all axiology is ontology, axiology, and epistemology. All it is the philosophical thing that the Christian people are doing, and they translate it into their own words of Christianese, of trying to poke around and do what Karl Popper said. I'll put his quote up here again, is that what we all do is kind of go make assertions and test them up against one another. And so he'll frequently point to the Nietzschean or the postmodern thing, that it's all just mere opinion and it's all relative and it just becomes a power game. This is where Peterson's tried to point this out to people since forever. I point to it too, is that this is where the new pragmatists come in. And you can kind of mix it up with just general pragmatism, but new pragmatism is a specific school of philosophers. That's the C.S. Peirce and William James. What those guys point to is that this is why I say when atheists kind of sneer and say it's a fallacy to say that because something thrives or survives means it's true. The new pragmatists would disagree with that. There's not just all infinite arbitrary choices like the postmodernists say. The new pragmatists already figured out 60, 70 years before that no, there's obviously best paths for surviving and thriving. There's obviously things that work better than other things. Pragmatism, this works better than that thing. And still to this day, by your fruits, you should know them. By the fruits, you should know them. Different religions obviously prove better that they survive and thrive better than other religions. And that doesn't just mean that they're doing good nowadays. It also means that they actually have kids on to the next freaking generation. Like atheists, like maybe we're doing it, you know what I mean? Maybe we've got it all figured out. Too late. We already didn't have enough kids for the next generation. Too late. Too freaking late. We already lost the new pragmatists. The new pragmatists say, yes, we can see stuff that works and does better generations down the line. And that's something that Peterson and Pajau point at, is that these different religious things kind of put into words generational concepts that are bigger than bigger than, as Brett Weinstein will put it, is like Harris thinks that these computers and these tech things can get us that huge amount of information, right?
Yeah.
But that's what religion just was. It was the thing that put together all the information across generations and generations and generations and generations and tried to communicate it out a little bit to you. And it came out a little wonky, but it gets passed on in stories. It gets passed on in
it ends up being parents telling their kids that porcupines can throw their quills.
Yeah, exactly. And so the pragmatists are just saying, like, well, we can point at what survives and what thrives is the thing that wins. And Peterson and maybe Brett Weinstein have been pointing out the big amount of data that you've been looking for has already been right in front of you this whole time. Sam Harris, even though I know you think you can like gather new data in your.
I guess what I sort of struggle with this, because I had a hard time with the Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris discussions when they talked about truth. And Brett Weinstein did sum it up the best when he used that porcupine quill thing. He's trying to explain why it isn't literally true, but it's pragmatically true.
Yeah, metaphorically true is what Brett was saying.
I guess I don't like using the term metaphorically true, because I was like, I get it now. I understand kind of what he's saying, that there's like that's true, but at the same time, like, it isn't true that porcupines can throw their quills. I understand there's a practical reason to tell that untruth to kids to keep them away from it, but like, I guess it's hard for it. It almost feels like maybe there needs to be a different word other than truth.
Yeah, and that's why I tried to say pragmatic truth or something like that. But I think where it really helps, because this is one of the things that I point at the right-wing postmodernists, right? And the right-wing postmodernists are kind of the ones saying, like, let's keep saying the porcupine throws the quills, right? And to me, there's a level that says, now, as soon as you know the porcupine doesn't throw the quills, it's best to say the porcupine doesn't throw the quills. Stay away from the porcupine because of this.
Let me treat it like it can throw.
But the larger point is that there's many things still, with all of our tech and all that stuff, we have many things that are the porcupine metaphorical belief, and we don't know it yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's more talking about what we don't know yet. And what we don't know yet is partially things that you just kind of have to step back and be humble and stop and look at tradition and say, we think we can tech ourselves out of this stuff. We think we can World Economic Forum tech ourselves into a utopian future. We think we can use this new tech to actually solve, like, say something as stupid as like they're talking about blocking out the sun to block some heat rays and all that sorts of stuff. And there's all sorts of warnings about having that type of hubris and that sort of deal. And so there's some sort of level where those idiots who think that that's a good idea aren't listening to pragmatic truth. They're pretty sure that they're just like so focused on these scientific truths that we can just go do this thing. They're not stopping and thinking about like a pragmatic thing that they're not even seeing yet. So
Sure.
to me, there's a point of when the cat's out of the bag on a thing, you can't put the cat back in the bag, you know? Like,
Yeah.
we know the porcupine thing. What the bigger concept
That's how
is.
I learned it, by the way.
Yeah.
Until an embarrassingly old age, I thought that porcupines threw their quills.
You didn't know that?
No, he said that. It was when he said that, I watched it like right after it came out, and I felt like a fucking idiot, because when I actually thought about it for a half a second, I was like, wait a minute, what mechanism could they possibly have that would throw every one of their quills? That's just
So
energetically inefficient, it seems like.
So I know about this quite a bit in the physique and bodybuilding world, right? And there's all sorts of stuff, especially in sports, and people know it in sports, where, like, take that blue tape, that stupid blue tape people would put on their legs to because they thought it was some sort of like, I don't even know what they thought that tape was doing, right? They'd put this tape on their elbows, and you ever see that blue tape?
Dude,
I'll pull a picture because it'll kind of blow your mind if you're kind of just like a person who's like, yeah, that's not doing anything. It's almost like the same thing as they used to do those suction cups and stuff like that.
Oh, they still do that. Michael Phelps did it.
Yeah. Let me see.
My wife's got a set of those. She's hell bent on thinking they're helpful.
Yeah. This is just him kind of starting to point out the postmodern problem. But the thing is like, he never gets to the pragmatists. It's like the pragmatists are already down the line from that. And what's funny about that too is, like, I shouldn't make fun of Larson or whatever, because the truth of it is this is all cyclical, because the pragmatists answered the postmodernists 60 years, 70 years before the postmodernists. Like, the pragmatists set out to answer the postmodern question way before the postmodernists got there. They noticed that everything seemed arbitrary and there were a million answers. So what's right is what seems to survive or thrive, or seems to be most efficient type stuff.
Yeah.
And it was already kind of like an easy answer to that crap. crap. But let me show you this stupid tape. So if you've gone like crazy distances in types of athletics and stuff like that.
I'm flattered that you think I would know what any of this is.
Well, sometimes because
you know that tape that you put on your legs before you run 7 miles? Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I spilled whiskey on my gut.
So the athletic world is a pragmatic world of scientism and science, right? So there's all sorts of like actual science, and it's just loaded up with scientism and getting to know.
Well, I would even call it ritual.
Yeah. It's ritual, and it's full of superstitions. Like John Larson said, I don't have any superstitions. And that's another area that I think, like thinking religiously, I go, yes, you do. And you just don't know, because I know that I do too. And I think me being aware that I have some superstitions makes me more capable of perhaps finding those. Does that make sense? Like if you're somebody who says like, I don't have any superstitions. Like I know that somewhere in my life,
you immediately rule out the possibility of you having superstitions.
Yeah.
And so why would you look for them in yourself?
And all over the place, in places that I can't even comprehend, because I think some of those pragmatic truths are happening on longer timelines than we're able to even comprehend as humans, you know. But I believe some porcupines throw quills right now and don't know what that is.
Okay, no, I get what you're saying. I guess the best. So I'm framing it in a different way in my mind, and I don't know if this makes any sense, but like you're talking about how they're superstitious. I almost find it more ritualistic, and it's part of it is because I've been reading these Jungian guys that talk about archetypes and shit like that, and they talk about the importance of ritual. And I think the best place in the athletic world to show this is free throws in basketball. How they tell you to always do the same ritual. Some people even call it your ritual before you do your free throw, and then you'll do the best. And if I had to guess, I'd say there's probably legitimate truth behind that. Like you could probably actually measure, and there's probably even science to back it up, like that your muscles making the same motions or whatever it be. So that's kind of how I'm taking this. But this part of it is the placebo, right? Because we've had studies on the placebo effect that like we very often will say something like, oh, you know, it's probably just the placebo effect, but just the placebo effect is insane to say, because it's like don't we have studies that say that even those participants who knowingly take a placebo perform better?
Yeah. And this is one of the things that I'm getting at right here, because I think even hardcore honesty in this world, this is one of the reasons why so much of the stuff, if you go back to even the very first, that same one where I was talking about the St. Christopher stuff, I was talking about like part of how you have to understand the world, and part of even why stuff's gotten so crazy is because people have gotten less physical. And being physical is important, because the Greeks even realized it. Like you got to be physical because you kind of got to be in touch with what reality is. And one of the best ways to be in touch with reality, he's kind of a goobus, but Henry Rollins put out this really good article one time about you got to lift weights because the iron never lies to you. It never, you know. But one of the things that I'm pointing at here, so I ran a marathon with my older brother, and I'm not much a runner, but I was able to get to the marathon. But anyway, we were running this marathon. And I'm somebody, Flip and I, like skeptic guide to the universe, like go back skeptics. We consider ourselves skeptics, all that sorts of stuff. I'm somebody who super sneers at stuff like this, right? And let me tell you, it worked. No, I'm just kidding. So what happened was we started running, and this girl that was with us started limping, you know, and she started limping and saying, oh gosh, I don't think I can finish this. And then they taped up, and she said, give me some of that blue tape. And they started blue taping her up. And me being the autist that I am starts going, you know, I start doing this thing, and my older brother just like smacks me, like, you know? And I was like, what? And because we're in the middle of nowhere, and she's got to finish this thing, and we're all kind of like going together and doing the thing. It was actually this wasn't a marathon, this was a Ragnar race, and it was the middle of the night. And she puts the stuff on, and she finishes the freaking race, right? And even stops limping. Now, one of the things that I've done is like I've done some pretty extreme things, and one of the things that I've found out in the extreme things, like I think most extreme people do, is that you can go way farther than you think you can, and you can suffer through worse things than you think. And one of the deals with it is, especially in this world where you're being so careful of like anything that cause harm. It's really, really hard, especially like in the weightlifting world, to know, did I just cross into injury? Because if it's injury, I should stop. Or is it soreness, or do I just think I'm injured? Or it's almost impossible to tell.
Yeah.
And but
I think
the truth
David
of it
Goggins doesn't have that reflex.
yeah. And but the thing is, like, if you do it and do it and do it, and one time go too far where it was injury, and then one time don't go one time go through it when it wasn't injury, you get a picture. You start to actually get a picture in your head. So you have to be somebody who went too far to get an injury sometimes.
So in this, so in this application, you would be the person who understands that the porcupine doesn't throw its quills. The blue tape doesn't actually like physically help you.
And maybe my older brother didn't trust that she knows that moment yet. Whereas somebody like me who's been through a lot of different stuff, I probably know that moment. Like I know when that's injury, because I've been injured. Because I've done
what I'm saying. What I'm saying though is, you knowing that the porcupine doesn't throw its quills, would it still be helpful for you to put the blue tape on?
No. Well, some of the studies claim that it still would.
No,
I don't know how true that is or not.
Let's say the studies are bullshit. Let's just, for sake of argument.
No. I would never. I didn't put the blue tape on. I wouldn't put the blue tape on. And that's a little bit where I am. That's a bit where I am religiously too.
I was gonna say, is that just like a function of how
I'm
your
in the
mind
place.
works?
I'm in the place of religion of saying, don't take off the blue tape. Some of these people, but I'm not gonna put on the blue tape. No,
I'm with you. I had a kind of a similar type thing years ago. I would watch My 600-Pound Life every now and then. For some reason, this is gonna sound terrible. I thought it'd be funny, and it's not. It's just sad. I was just like, oh, fat people are funny, but then I watched it and it was very depressing. And anyway,
I was going to show a clip just today of some guy from Britain in the 2000s. It was going around TikTok today, and it was just showing his intros. And he was some guy who was helping fat people, and his whole intros were like, "We're going to help this piggy fatty. We're going to help this fat piggy. Oh, look at these fat piggies. We're going to help change them." And every single one was like, "Man, this is only 10
Stop it! Don't call me a piggy.
We're here to help these piggy faces."
So this one, and they almost always fail, and they even give you the statistics. It's very low for somebody that's that big to keep that weight off, even if they do lose it. And this guy, and it was an episode that was years old. He's he's yelling at his dad to get him Taco Bell. He hasn't left his recliner in like a week, except to take his shit and then somehow try to hose off his butt. It's just disgusting and depressing. And he finally gets on the show, and they take him to the doctor after he's supposed to lose a certain amount of weight. And they never lose the certain amount of weight in the first visit. It's the doctor's always like, you gained weight. Do you know how difficult it is to gain weight when you're already 689 pounds? You had to eat like 12,000 calories a day. And so the guy, and usually they try to make excuses. And this guy goes, "Well, I kind of messed up, but I'm not a quitter." And I laughed at that, just like that. I laughed. I was like, oh my God, what about you isn't a quitter? You're falling asleep in a pile of half-eaten tacos on a recliner that you haven't left in a week. Like that's you. That's what you are. Everything about your life is a quitter. And then he lost a shitload of weight. Like he won. He beat the episode. Like he lost 250 pounds in like the 6 months that they were after him. And then I was like, there's no way he kept it up. And I looked it up. He was thinner than I was at the time. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, he's not a quitter. But how does that make sense? He was a quitter. Everything about him screamed quitter. And then he told himself, I am not a quitter. And he made that true.
So I just barely told because when I talk about that blue tape, I think it's funny because like in that blue tape scenario, I can say I'm the one who knows more. But I don't want to be arrogant about that because I'm just the one who knows. Like I don't believe in that blue tape thing, and I think the science is pretty obvious that it doesn't work. But
yeah, but maybe there's a blue tape you believe in.
I believe in some blue tape somewhere for sure. And the same thing with that other guy's like, I have all sorts of areas in my life where I can be king discipline and I do it. But I just tell my girlfriend that they're not like, I'm telling you, like, I can't even describe it. I'm not bragging because it's not even a brag. It was kind of more OCD level stuff. But when I did like those competitions, the months and stuff that I went through these diets and these things, it was so extreme. And guess what? I can't quit this shit for a day, you know? And I honestly don't think that's any better. I honestly don't. I'm not being like arbitrary here. Like people who are stuck on cigarettes or whatever, I do not think that I have some higher, better willpower than them. I've tried to quit that. I've tried 1,000 times. I told my girlfriend the other night I want to quit it again. And she looks at me and goes, you can't quit it. You're not going to quit it. You know, just exactly what you're saying. Like when you were telling me that thing of watching the guy on the thing, and you want to know what? I want to quit it, and this time I want to quit it because I hate the companies, not because
that might motivate you more.
Yeah, and that was
every single one. I never thought I'd see my dad drink a Pepsi. He's like religiously devoted to Coke, and then. He found out Coke released that like training on how to be less white or whatever.
Yeah, well, honestly,
like drinking Pepsi
because they hadn't got rid of that. But honestly, like the other day, and I've even known this for a while, but like I found out like what percentage BlackRock owns them and how into ESG stuff they are and all that. And I was like, I can't keep giving these dipshits money. I can't, and it's not. I've wanted to quit it forever, and it's not good for me and all that sort of stuff. I don't think it's bad either because that's one of those skeptics things when people try to tell you that
it's actually worse.
Water and all that stuff is bullshit. But I do agree that that's bullshit money I'm spending for bullshit liquid. And
I remember the first time I heard about diet soda. Like I was pretty young, so they're like, "Oh, it's diet soda." Like, diet soda, like for when you want to like lose weight. They're like, yeah, and I was like, shouldn't that just be water? If you want to lose weight, shouldn't you just drink water?
I'm addicted. You want to know what got me addicted to it?
What?
Mission in Mexico City, man.
Really?
I couldn't drink the water, and so I'd get Diet Cokes everywhere because I always wanted something to drink with me, or the Coca Lights, which probably weren't even diet down there.
I don't know what my gut is made of, but I just drank Brazilian water.
You just drank water. It? No, I didn't dare. I didn't drink.
Like, yeah, they gave us the filters, but I was like, fuck it. I don't want it. It's annoying to drink through. So, and that was fine.
I didn't drink any water when I was down there. So yeah.
Did you not drink juice?
Yeah, well, when we go to like members' houses and stuff, and if they forced it to us or something like that, but I'd never purposely do it. But we also kind of had a rule on our mission that we weren't allowed to turn shit down. And so I ate every weird thing on the planet and all that. I'm sure you.
Yeah, I ate an armadillo once because
that kind of beats me on weird stuff. Like to me, the worst thing I ever ate was some weird fish stuff. But because I hate that. But to other people, like eating every part of the cow and the pig and the hearts and the eyes and the ears and the tongues. And the weirdest thing I ever had was families brought the head out and it still had like the fur on it, and they just gave us some tortillas in one hand and a knife in the other hand.
Oh, damn.
You're supposed to start going at the head right there.
Yeah, this armadillo, they didn't even like. They just ripped the guts out and then put it on its back in the oven, and they ripped the leg off and gave it to me, and it had hair growing out of it still.
Oh man.
He's like, it tastes like chicken, doesn't it? I was like, no, it kind of tastes like nothing. He's in it. What do you mean chicken?
I got pretty good at using tortillas and being good at keeping just the tortilla part in my mouth. Just so I was only touching tortilla on my tongue and mouth and then just swallowing it down as I chewed.
See, I was pretty much, if the most nihilistic time of my life was on my mission, and I was just like, I saw the armadillo. I was like, is this like one of those? I didn't know anything about it. I was like, is this gonna give me leprosy? Because like associated to. And I was like, fuck it. Why not just die here? Who cares?
Just let it take me out. Just let it kill me. Yeah, I did not like my mission. One of my companions, I had him on one time, and he wants to come back on again. But he always says that he used to tell me that one of his biggest testimonies was knowing how much I hated the mission and how hard I kept going. Because just like other stuff, I'd go hard, and I was not shy about admitting that I hated being there. but I just keep going.
I never told anyone I liked my mission.
Yeah, I was honest about it, but what weirded people out is that I also just went hard, like
I did for the first year.
Mhm.
And then after that, it was like, if I had a companion that really wanted to enjoy his mission and really wanted to work hard, I'd be like, fine, I'll do it with you. But if I had one that was lazy, I'd be like, we're going to just rent movies. We're going to watch Hot Fuzz tonight.
Yeah, no, I made it through without then. Sometimes I wonder if I could have gone back to my mission and had more fun with it and enjoyed it more. I would have liked it better, but
maybe, but then I would have just not gone.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, at the same time too, it could have been fun, like being around Mexico City and learning the language, like not being a missionary, but that could have been a fun place. And those guys I was around.
Brazil was fun as hell.
And I liked a lot of the other missionaries I was around too.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were total dipshits.
I think you are hallucinating. I don't doubt your sincerity. It's not every day that one atheist accuses another of cowardice for refusing to debate a Christian. It's even rarer when both are Oxford dons. Richard Dawkins, the world's most famous atheist, is facing that accusation because he has turned down an offer to publicly debate a man regarded by many as the world's leading defender of Christian belief. I don't care who you are, what community you come from, what church your version reveals. I want to talk to you, have a dialogue with you. The evidence one way or the other. We'll have a friendly conversation about it, and on with the argument.
Hello, I'm Bill Craig. Pleased to meet you. We have a UK speaking tour, which is being planned for October of 2011.
Dr. Craig, you've debated the top atheist thinkers in the world and university campuses and other events. What about a debate with Dawkins?
The ultimate 747 gambit is a very serious argument against the existence of God.
It is a patently logically invalid argument,
and one to which I have yet to hear a theologian give a convincing answer, despite numerous opportunities and invitations to do so.
He has resolutely refused to debate.
How many other thoughts are having a debate with Mr. Dawkins?
He said, I wouldn't debate a religious person unless he were at least a bishop. And since Craig isn't a bishop,
I would like to hear what's wrong with the arguments that I put forward. Nobody has actually said what's wrong with it.
I would like to know why this is not an example of the new atheists doing what Lord Harris has described as avoiding the strongest possible arguments for the opposition.
I have always said when invited to do debates that I would be happy to debate a bishop, a cardinal, an Archbishop.
Dawkins has debated academics, including, for example, John Lennox.
But that I don't take on creationists.
How old is the world? 13.7 billion years. I'm not advocating creation science here of any sort. I'm offering a philosophical argument for the existence of God, and it's quite consistent with having methodological naturalism within science.
The Banana Man's partner, Kirk Cameron, was supposed to be debating with me on Bill O'Reilly show. I for once departed from my usual rule, and my publisher persuaded me to let this Adele write on it. And I don't take on people who only claim to say that they are professional debaters. They've got to have something more. And
the letter that Dawkins sent back said, I don't know who William Lane Craig is.
He's a philosopher. He's been published in many philosophical journals. He has similar credentials to A.C. Grayling.
And while a debate with Craig might look good on Craig's resume, it wouldn't look good on mine.
He won't debate perhaps the most armed example of Christian apologetics, if we could put it like that.
Well, I think it would be a very good dialogue. I have written published critiques of his arguments in the God Delusion. And so far as I know, he's not cared to respond to these either, even in print.
Second problem with Dawkins' objections.
They've got to have something more than that. I'm busy. Sorry. I'm busy.
We have not managed to pull that one off.
That has prompted some people, including an atheist philosopher at Oxford University, Daniel Kame, to accuse Richard Dawkins of cowardice in refusing to debate you. He has debated pastors. He has debated cultural commentators. He debated Pastor Ted Haggard.
These are academic forums where one concentrates on the arguments and counter-arguments, the truth of the premises of those arguments and objections to them.
Accordingly, in tonight's debate, I'm going to defend two basic contentions. First,
we have to fight very hard to let people say things even if they're crazy. And let's face it, most of the people getting up in pulpits every Sunday, whatever day of the week, are saying things that seem to us pretty crazy.
Stand up for yourself.
Stand up for what?
Exactly. Yeah. I'm very happy to be debating Dr. Craig, the one Christian apologist who seems to put the fear of God into many of my fellow atheists.
The fact is that I haven't sought to have this debate with Dawkins. It's simply set up by these independent groups. I've actually never set up any debate. It's always been simply a response to the invitation of groups on campus.
I'm busy.
What they plan to do at the Sheldonian Theatre in Oxford is set up the stage for a debate format with an empty table, an empty chair, where Dawkins will be given the opportunity to the last minute to show up and join in the debate. But if he doesn't, then I'll simply give a lecture criticizing his arguments in the God Delusion against the existence of God.
East.